Good morning, Bucknutters. Good morning, Bucknutters. I'm going to let some people sign on here before we really get rolling because I can tell. Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, August 30, 2022. I am Dan. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change, and look who it is. The Fong is back. Steve Fong, Director of Recruiting for 24/7 Sport, back-to-back visits. Given the gravity of this weekend's recruiting information and knowledge we need to know, had to bring in the best. Steve, how are you?
Good morning, Daniel. That point spread go up in the Notre Dame Ohio State game from 14 to 18. Did I hear that?
Last I saw was 17 and a half. So if it went to 18, it probably depends on what book you got.
But at one point it was just 14 and a half, right?
The lowest I saw was 15 and a half. I guess that might be another book situation. But yeah, you've gone from basically 2 touchdowns to almost 3 touchdowns if you go with the 18.
Notre
How you
Dame,
feel about it?
Notre Dame, they had some wins in the Brian Kelly era over top 10 opponents, but never an opponent that was at full strength that people thought could win the national championship. And so going back to 1993, Notre Dame really hasn't won a game like this. So people just, revisionist history or whatever, just expecting that to happen again. And I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying
It's a pretty big spread.
The average joker, not even Ohio State and Notre Dame fans, are probably just, Notre Dame's going to get their ass beat Saturday night. And, so that's why that spread is moving.
Yeah, Ohio State's also, and not to be too tangential here, Ohio State is what you call a national. Actually, Notre Dame is too, for that matter. They're both national teams, so they get a little more juice in Vegas when they're good or bad. But this one, I guess, those two would cancel out because they're favorites of the people.
The thing with Notre Dame is that they are a team that's really been around 5 to 10, and I know they've made 2 college football playoffs. They've had a lot of players drafted. I mean, they're not fraudulent by any stretch. They've also had a lot of opportunities to play teams that have been 1 through 4 and hasn't gone well in really any of those contests. So again, I think that the betting line is kind of predicated on all of that. We'll see what happens in this ball game here, as Notre Dame brings veteran offensive and defensive line into the shoe, but huge question marks at quarterback. Still, I think they have some talented receivers, but nobody proven difference maker. And then I think that in the secondary, Brandon Joseph had a hell of a career at Northwestern, but I don't know if they have like an elite cover guy. So that's just not something that that doesn't stack up well against Ohio State. But on the flip side, I think Ohio State's offensive line is incredibly talented, but maybe week 1, Notre Dame and their veteran front, can make some things happen for the Irish and, have some splash plays that make things happen. And maybe Notre Dame can run the ball, particularly on the perimeter. They got speed and they got a really healthy running back room, in my opinion. But again, huge question mark at quarterback. Obviously, tight ends elite. Got some talented receivers. Lorenzo Styles leads that room. Y'all know him well in these circles. And then, I think Notre Dame's defensive line and linebackers are extremely smart, extremely veteran. And I think we talked about this last week. A lot's been made about Ohio State going out and hiring Coach Knowles to change around an Ohio State defense that struggled. Notre Dame, with Marcus Freeman moving to the corner office, they hired Al Golden. And talking to people around South Bend, they think that was an elite hire, a guy that's going to scheme Notre Dame extremely well, but also be someone that has so much experience that he's going to be really good at making in-game changes to whatever's being thrown at him. So I'm pretty excited for Saturday night's game. That in Florida, Utah, be good primetime TV.
Yeah, it's kind of like the inverse of last year. First of all, what you said about Ohio State's offense and defense, everybody wants to see the defense. I mean, I can tell you right now, just based on the content we put out, you put in Knowles' name in the headline, everybody wants to hear about it just because he is, for lack of a better term, he's kind of being viewed as the Messiah here to kind of get things fixed around. They're expecting a Hafley-like rebound immediately. But the way you talk about the line, defensive line for Notre Dame kind of reminds me last year of the first game when we played Minnesota, when Ohio State played Minnesota. And Minnesota, not a great outfit by any stretch, but they had a very veteran offensive line. And the running back, kid from Good Counsel, what's his name? Mo Ibrahim?
Yeah.
Ran wild on them. And that was partially because I think they had everyone on the line was about 23 years old. And when we had you on last week and you talked about how everybody on Notre Dame's defensive line is a grown man, I do think that really does help for the first game of the season. Like, to the shoe, you know what I mean? You've been there and you've done that.
And I mean, Notre Dame, they have a top 10 pick perhaps on their edge, Isaiah Foskey. You know, he's going to be a handful. And again, if Ohio State beats Notre Dame down, Notre Dame is damn good. There's just the way college football has kind of evolved. You have 2 or 3 teams that are just way better than everybody else. That doesn't mean they can't trip and fall at some point during the season, but normally they're up for their big games, you know, and, again, like Notre Dame, the NFL draft, the wins that they've had says that they are a program that is a top 10 football program. They're trying to get to the next level. Is Tyler Buckner the guy that can take them there? That is the big question. But I think that they are optimistic about him around South Bend as well. And this is a hell of a test for him against Ohio State, because last year our sample size of Tyler Buckner was nothing but run plays early on to keep Notre Dame ahead of the sticks, ahead of the on task with their offense and their play calling. He would come in and run. And that was it. They would never throw. Then against Virginia Tech, he lights the Hokies up in the first half, but just plays below average in the second half. That's kind of our sample size of him. And then I have an opinion from high school, but none of that stuff matters anymore. He's in his third year, or he's in his second year at Notre Dame now. I don't know. The years run together. I think he's in his second year now. And so last year was his true freshman year. He's in his second year. And, he's got a heck of a test at night in Columbus, but he's got a veteran offensive line in front of him and a really good running back room and maybe the best tight end in the country. So he's got some pieces around him. And again, I think that Notre Dame has some athletic, talented receivers. And that's what college football is about. People breaking out, and maybe they'll have a guy break out at wideout, in that ball game as well. It's a big stage for Notre Dame. It's obviously also a big stage for Ohio State, for them to showcase their new coordinator and their souped up offense of just unbelievable playmakers, Travion Henderson and Mayan Williams and the other running back from North Carolina. Why am I drawing a blank?
The injured Evan Pryor.
Yeah, so that Pryor's out, and then you got obviously Jackson Smith-Njigba and Fleming and Marvin Harrison and Ryan Day, Kevin Wilson working on your offense. That's a pretty scary duo right there.
It is a lot to ask of a freshman quarterback, and let's say his first real start and real playing time, where they're going to ask him to be a real quarterback, to come into the shoe on a Saturday night to open the season against the, first or second pick in the draft back. If you look at the guys who have had success, Ohio State, the 2 games or the 3 games that jump out in my mind recently are the loss to Oregon, the loss to Oklahoma, and the loss to Virginia Tech back in the day. All 3 of those quarterbacks were probably 21, 22 years old. Even the kid from Virginia Tech, whose name escapes me, had a full beard and was like a grown man. Baker Mayfield, no matter what he's done in the pros, was a tremendous college quarterback. And then Anthony Brown had the game of his life last year, but he's also, an older kid. So to ask a young guy like Buckner to come in and do that to me is a mountain too high to climb. But
sure,
what you made a great point in that Notre Dame has really good offensive players. If the defense isn't fixed, they've got what it takes to exploit them.
With Buckner, he did start a game at Virginia Tech at night. So he has a taste of that environment. Now, I don't know how much more the decibel level is going to be at the shoe compared to Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech has great fan tradition for night games.
Oh, it does.
And it rumbles in there when you come out of the tunnel and enter Sandman and stuff. And so I don't think that Buckner is going. I'm not worried about the environment for him as much as I'm just worried about the experience of, like, the game slowing down for you because you've had all those reps in between the chalk. I don't think he's gonna be intimidated by the shoe itself.
Well, we'll know early on. I guess you got to give the defense a few drives to get their feet wet, but if they're just up and running it down Ohio State's throat, which was the issue against Michigan, or the left side run they had against, and that happened over and over, you'll know early on whether or not they've got a chance to compete with that. All right, we're going to quick break here, and then we are going to break down what is an unbelievable red carpet list for Ohio State this weekend. All right, we are back. There's a ton of comments on here, and we're going to answer some questions. But first, let's talk about the recruiting list of guys coming in. I said this, and it's going to be the title of the show. This might be the most impressive overall list of official and unofficial visits, commits, and prospects they've ever had at a game. Before we go into detail here, though, I need you to assuage some people's fears here. Because the visit Ohio State had over the summer with a ton of defensive guys there's this rumbling narrative that they had too many guys on campus and they got spread too thin and weren't able to give the proper time to all of the recruits, and that in turn damaged their ability to get commitments from these guys. So I'm not sure what that is, but when you see this, it's bigger and even better than that time. So it caused some angst about, are we going to have time to hang out? Now, Bill did a good job of clarifying this, but if you could do this as well, there's a much bigger difference for visiting in the summer, visiting for a game, is there not?
Well, I think for a night game of two top 5 opponents, you want as many recruits as you can have on campus for that one to soak in that scene and be there together. I think that recruits building a rapport with each other on a particular college campus is a big deal. And so you're going to have a lot of Ohio State commits there that are kind of going to be your de facto recruiters in the student section or wherever they're sitting. And then guys are going to get time with Ohio State coaches before the game. They're going to get to be in the locker room after the game, after what you hope is a big win. You're going to get a little bit of time to chat with Ryan Day or Larry Johnson or Kevin Wilson or Brian Hartline or whoever your main recruiter is. And Ohio State, their staff just does a great job of building meaningful relationships with kids before they come to campus. I know that the Buckeyes didn't strike gold on one recruiting weekend for the first time in a friggin' decade. So we're going to reinvent the wheel now on Ohio State recruiting. That's a top 10 class annually that has future NFL draft picks all the time. It just didn't go your way once. I mean, good gosh, it's
we're not used to that, dude.
Yeah, like my 7-year-old's baseball team had an unbelievable summer. They lost a few games, and there were tears in the dugout during games of all those losses. I mean, it's like, come on, like so how dare Ohio State not get some commitments during a recruiting weekend? And you guys aren't the only fan base. You got Georgia fans. I mean, they lost out on a receiver last week. You'd have thought you would have thought Kirby Smart forgot how to recruit. Or, every spring, I swear to God, when Alabama has like 3-4 recruits, you got message board posters wondering if the fastball is gone there. I mean, it just wasn't a good weekend for Ohio State. But who knows? It's a long way till December and a long way till February before people put pen to paper. But I look at Ohio State's class, and it's still one of the best in America. They're in the thick of it for some elite guys. Some of those guys are coming to campus this weekend. 2 5-star edge rushers, Keon Keeley and Damon Wilson, and Ohio State.
Those are official visits.
They're official visits, and so they're going to get quality time. They're going to walk into their hotel room, and it's going to be decorated with all kinds of sweets and good food to eat, good food that just makes you feel good. Then you're going to go out and get your surf and turf. You're going to get to meet with the coaches. You're going to stay overnight with players. And if Notre Dame wins that, if Ohio State beats Notre Dame and it's going to be a fun night out with the guys, and so I think the more the merrier, particularly with the younger guys, the 2024s and 2025s. Just let them come in, see the place, rub some elbows with them a little bit in person. Get a chance to talk to those elite guys from Georgia that are going to be on campus, and get some face-to-face time in person, because you've been building such a great rapport with those guys over the FaceTime or phone calls and stuff. But getting KJ Bolden and guys like that back in your building is big.
It's so they have a ton of commitments coming. I mean, you could almost see a bunch of dudes are coming, but it really does have kind of a defensive vibe. If you look, there's guys coming in that running for the all-time name team. Sammy Brown, who is, guys who run I told him I have an obsession with people who run the 400, but a linebacker that runs the 400 and has a mullet. I mean, come on.
And state champion wrestler.
Bryce West, even our Glenville will be here. Peyton Woodyard. I mean, it's incredible, the group here. Even the 2025 kid we got a commitment from, what's his name? Gilbert will be here. You're also going to have the Pied Piper himself here, Dylan Raiola, and Ryan Montgomery. So it is an awesome group of people. We are now going to take some questions. Let's see. Buckeye should grind pound Notre Dame even when the All right, good Lord. The Fong, not the Fonz.
I think I picture it more like Ohio State hitting home run plays in that game, whether that's Travion Henderson getting loose or those receivers getting over the top. If that game's a grind, Notre Dame's in the game.
Agreed. Okay, here we go. Of the big three defensive, this is Philip Scarberry. Of the big three defensive ends coming in this weekend, which one you feel we have the best shot at getting? So Keeley, I guess everybody assumes he decommitment from Notre Dame, assumes he's going to Alabama. I'm going to say this, though. This is going to be the first game these guys have all been to, obviously because it's a season opener, but it's also the first one since, I'm not going to say the pandemic's officially over, but they're going to get the full experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no masks. There's no encumbrance. So I do think it's going to make a tremendous impression. Keeley, is he even considering Ohio State, you think? Or is this guy just getting a chance to tour the Midwest here?
No, he absolutely is considering Ohio State. He's been talking to him for a long time. It was a school that back when he was committed to Notre Dame was always in the mix to be a visit, to get a visit. The crystal ball's on Bama. He's visited Bama twice. He's seen what they have to offer a couple times. But he's connected with guys like Luke Montgomery in Ohio State's recruiting class and fits in. Keon Keeley fits in anywhere, by the way. He's a very impressive young man, not just an impressive pass rusher. So it'll be interesting to see what this official does and how it moves the needle for his recruitment moving forward. And people talk about his family really liking Ohio State as well. So I know he's getting his mom up to Columbus this weekend, and that's a big visit for her. So we'll see what it looks like coming out. I mean, recruiting ebbs and flows. People are like, oh, you should only be allowed to put in one crystal ball like it's a game. The crystal ball is not a game. It's just for you, the users, to come to the site and have a sense of where that particular person thinks the young man's going to go that day. And sometimes that information changes or that intel changes. Sometimes the pick's just wrong, but to act like it's like a crime that changed the picks are there for you to have a feel of where that person thinks the young man's going. And coming into the visit, I like Alabama. If coming out of the visit, I like Ohio State, I'll put my pick there.
Right. I mean, kids change their mind too. I mean, I once covered, I'm not going to tell you his name, but I was very close to one basketball recruit once who had really, really good offers. And was walking, went to the podium to do his announcement. He had always wanted to go to North Carolina. I remember saying they had not offered. And I said, if you're walking up to the podium and North Carolina offers, where are you going? And he said, North Carolina. So things are fluid, man. And you're so right about that. Okay. Chris Glover asks, who was the werewolf of all werewolves for the 2024 class on defense? Now that's a term I use for here's the ultimate werewolf would be Micah Parsons. Just a guy who's kind of just a force of nature out there on defense. You could make an argument for Sonny Styles in the last class for us, just in kind of just bigger, stronger, faster than you guy. Who's someone we should get either they have on board or isn't on board that they want in 2024, or just anyone?
Well, I'm still learning about these 24s. Some guys that, I think when you look at a guy like Sammy Brown, who you raised about a little bit earlier, he's also a state wrestling champ. He's got this look of like, he looks like he's from 1989. Like
he does. By the way,
stash.
Fine year to graduate high school.
He's just a hard-nosed, uber athletic, tough, super. Have you seen him lift, Dan? Have you seen any of the videos of him?
I have.
He is really just, his ability to bend, his flexibility, his explosion, his power. He is just a unique human. He works incredibly hard, obviously, but he is gifted too. Now, I was
trying to think of a comparison for him. I'm almost going to go Brian Urlacher.
So Brian Urlacher was a safety that moved.
I know, at Mexico. Yep.
Right. So,
but Sammy's got that speed and kind of that like agility for a guy you're talking about a wrestler, which is anyone who knows any wrestlers with cauliflower ear is torture. Then he runs the 400 and he's the state champ. The running the 400 is one of the hardest things in sports. I'm not kidding. And then to be just a werewolf linebacker and have a blonde mullet.
The thing about Micah Parsons that I haven't seen since his class, and I don't recall before. He is the most violent high school football player I've ever saw. Yeah. And just his ability to close and still hit hard. Micah Parsons didn't need much of a buildup to knock the shit out of you.
No, it's still the truth. No one accelerates. If you want to watch what separates Micah Parsons from the rest of the group, when he redirects in the pocket to chase down the quarterback, he is there so quickly that the quarterback is actually caught off guard because he's used to be chased by all these other guys. This is going to sound like a bizarre comparison, but if you see people go to block Giannis's shot, their arm will fully extend, and then his arm is just 3 or 4 inches longer, and they're not used to it, and he lays it in. That's Parsons. He's just a different breed of cat. I don't think Sammy Brown is that guy. Parsons, you can make an argument right now, is the best defensive player on the earth, literally. Him or Aaron Donald, right?
Parsons is one of the best high school football players I've ever seen. And the thing that's even interesting about him is that he actually, we talked about Urlacher going from safety to linebacker. Parsons was a defensive end in high school because it's like, no one can block him. Like, why are we moving him away from the ball? We're just going to get him closer to the quarterback and then try and elude him from there. So he played defensive end, but he had elite testing. And I remember writing a story about how it would work out at Penn State at linebacker because he was an elite athlete, and it obviously did. And I know you guys used to joke around with me a little bit about my affinity for Penn State, but that COVID team that Penn State was going to run out there with Parsons and that team was going to be really damn good. And they obviously didn't have Parsons, and I feel like there were some other guys that didn't play that year for them as well, that sat out the season and just prepared for the draft. But those have obviously been the teams that have given Ohio State hell because they weren't scared of them,
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the D'Antonio Michigan State teams that had so much success for 5 years.
Hard-nosed.
They just were tough. They had NFL guys, but more than anything, they just were not scared to play Ohio State. They wanted to, and so they were wars.
Prove themselves, no doubt. No. Those Penn State games, it's just very stressful, but they turned out beautifully for the most part. All right, let's talk about one guy here, and then I'll let you go. I watched Mateo Uiagalelei play over the weekend. Now, I believe the St. John Bosco versus Allen, Texas. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, they hammered him.
Okay. This was, to say it was a star-studded affair. I mean, you're talking about a big-time California private school in Allen, Texas, which probably has 9,000 kids at the high school. This field, when you watch the game, was so with Division I prospects. It was incredible. Even among all those dudes, Mateo Uiagalelei looks different. He moves different. He has a wingspan like a pterodactyl. Okay, like he's that guy. You know, when it looks like their biceps coming out from under the shoulder pads, so you think they're wearing small pads and they're not. He made plays at tight end. He was not. You cannot block him. The first guy blocking him does not block him. Okay, they redirect the pocket. They move the pocket constantly. So I was hoping to be impressed, and I was borderline overwhelmed. Please tell us where we stand with him. He is not on the visit list for this weekend. Obviously, he's a Californian, but your thoughts on the Mateo Uiagalelei recruitment? And are my eyes too big for my stomach? That good?
No. I mean, we obviously love him. You know, he's a young man that we rank as a top 10 player in the country, regardless of position. But he's 6'5", over 260 pounds. And if you go back last year, you see him making one-handed catches on fly routes from the tight end position. He's just a natural football player in addition to his physical gifts. I mean, he's powerful. He's physical, he's ferocious, and he's got a motor. And he's just one of the best high school football players in the country, let alone a great prospect. You know, sometimes you look at a prospect and you're like, that young man's got a lot of upside. I mean, with Mateo, I mean, he's just a force. I mean, he's a force in addition to having a huge ceiling on the next level.
Okay, there's some word here that he is coming this weekend. We'll get that confirmed for you. Bill obviously has that somewhere. I should have that. But I just was overwhelmed by watching him on tape. I tend to get, I'm a little critical of dudes, but so impressive. All right, we've reached that. Look, if Big Dave said it, it's the truth. So, we hope both are here, and we hope both get plenty of attention. My guess is if Big Dave and Son get here, that there'll be plenty for them to chow on in the hotel room. Where will you be watching the game? What is your pick?
I'll be watching the game at my house, ready to bring recruiting updates with the dean afterwards. So that's just low key. I don't get to have fun like y'all during the games, you know. I mean, a night game, Ohio State fans, some of y'all will have a case of beer in you by the time that thing kicks off, I would imagine, especially if it's hot. I feel like it's like an Indy 500 type day for me.
Yeah, the over-under for beer consumption, average fan, let's go with 11.5.
I mean, like Indy 500, that first beer cracks at like 5:45 in the morning.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get that for this game just because
you don't need it because the race starts at noon or 12:30.
Right. Well, if you get a noon kickoff, it's kegs and eggs.
You guys are getting more time to, you know, and I don't know if it's going to be 90 degrees or whatever. It could be muggy. You know, I don't know what it's going to be.
I can check that right now, actually. Go ahead.
Obviously I like Ohio State, but I feel like I've picked Ohio State. I pick Ohio State every week. I got picked y'all. So you got, but I'm not undefeated in picking Ohio State. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. But you know, I think the Buckeyes have more big play guys on offense, and so with that, I think that'll be the difference in the game.
Sunny and 87 for the daytime. So watch your consumption, people. Maybe hydrate, mix in every few adult beverage, because it's going to be a long sludge. Now, here's what's really important. Go ahead.
I got a pro tip there that maybe a few of y'all. I mean, the one thing you want to do is before you leave, you want to take a little Centrum and just put it in a little plastic bag and put that in your pocket. And as you're leaving the shoe or whatever after the game's over, just pop that Centrum in, get that multivitamin flowing right back into the body because you ripped out, as the day went on, you ripped out every good nutrient that you had in you, and you just left
Enjoyably.
it on High Street, or you just left it in the parking lot, or you left it in the shoe. You have no nutrients in you. Water's a given, but the multivitamin is what gets you back on your game for when your child does not care that you went to the Ohio State Notre Dame game and he wants you to get up and play with them the next day. That multivitamin is the key. This show is brought to you by multivitamin, the hangover cure before you even had the hangover.
And guess what? This is how this is going to work. This is very important, people. Right after the game ends, and I mean the second it ends, we begin with What We Learned Live, hosted by Dave Biddle. It will be the best post-game show you can get, and it will be right afterwards. So if you're leaving the stadium, if you're at home, if you're driving somewhere, if you're on the West Coast, the East Coast, if you're one of our many fans overseas, immediately after the game, What We Learned Live with Dave Biddle. There'll be a guest appearance from Bill Kurlick to let you know how the recruiting went. We'll get reports from the locker room from Steve Hellwagon and Patrick Murphy. This is our post-game show, our very popular post-game series, our post-game feature. What We Learned has turned into What We Learned Live. Maybe someday we'll even get Steve Fong on there. This weekend,
Hey,
I'm just hoping for a W.
I'll be around. Wife's out of town. Kids are with the in-laws. I'll be solo at the Wilt Fong house too.
You never know who will show up on What We Learned Live. Mark that on your calendars, people. It will be every week, right after the game. And I mean right after the game. Final buzzer, boom, you're on. So we appreciate Steve stopping by. Going to be this weekend, people. Please be careful. Hydrate. Take care of yourself. No malfeasance in the parking lot. All that good stuff. Have a good one, Bucknutters.
Take care, y'all. See you on the front row.